Wowzers, it's happening. In the frosted Belgian landscape, we're gonna talk about silence. Isn't it incredible, Silvia?
Yeah.
That's what she says. So the intention behind this video is to do a little interview, but it's an interview with me, but I can't interview myself. So I ask
That's why I'm here.
Silvia to interview me. So you can start. I'll let her do the job.
So, hello everyone. Today we're here to talk about a silent retreat, a self-silent retreat that Michał did a while ago, a month ago, something like that, where he spent 2 days in silence, and I'm gonna be asking him a few questions about it. So, can you tell me about why you did this and just why you did this?
That's a good question. I've been just noticing this internal feeling that I need to spend more time with myself. And it was quite funny because it was in my gut growing for a while, like this really strong need. And I had this a little bit shy intention to do it over Christmas time. And it's kind of unusual to spend Christmas on a silent retreat, but it really felt like the right thing to do. And then, like, something I really deeply need. And then somehow it all ended up perfectly. You were leaving, so I wouldn't have you around because normally we would spend Christmas together. And then quite a few of my close friends were leaving. So it was like a perfect opportunity. Like, yeah, I want to do that. So then I committed to myself. Okay, I'm gonna do that on Christmas. I'm gonna spend 2 days on this kind of main silent retreat, and then I'm just gonna take a few days to decompress afterwards. So yeah, it was 2 days plus a couple of days of resurfacing. And my intention was really to break this usual pattern of consuming lots of information, whether it's messages or talking with people or books or music, and just be in stillness and like really, just stop. And in this moment of stop, of pause, see what's gonna happen. I didn't really, go with like a specific intention, like, hey, after that I want to have clarity and that. It's just no, the feeling was I need this space for pause, clean slate, reboot, and from there whatever needs to emerge will emerge naturally.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. So your main intention was to spend time with yourself and get
Yeah.
rid of all this clutter and stimulation that you usually have.
Yes, and really spend time really with myself without anything else
Yeah.
to do, right? Because I mean, I enjoy spending time with myself, but very often I default to certain activities that are, like reading books or creating card games or, randomly getting lost in browsing
So you
internet.
weren't creating anything during this retreat either.
Not exactly. That's
Okay.
actually an interesting point. So, when designing the retreat, I found that one very, very, very important thing for me is to set a very clear protocol of what are the boundaries of my container. What does it mean to be on a silent retreat? And especially since I was facilitating one for myself, I had to create these boundaries. And I even had a card for it that I created a couple of days before. So it was kind of, it was in the back of my head. And actually on the very last day, I just wrote it down like, that's it, that's the final list. So, certain things were obvious, like, I don't want to use my devices, laptop off, phone off. I don't want to interact with other people, so like no humans. I don't want to be reading, all that things. This was very clear to me. But actually, the one thing that was very unclear, and I remember spending quite some time wrestling with this idea, is what about creation, right? Because it happens often to me that I just get an idea and then I want to process this idea, and then I ended up spending many hours building this idea. So I was considering, should I just put a rule, no creation whatsoever? But it didn't feel right for some reason. So I gave myself permission to create, so I didn't make any hard rules. So, I had my journal available if I want to journal. I had cards available as well. Um, but what I put as a rule was being, and that was the only rule that was kind of positive, not negative. So I had, like laptop and phone off. So like this doesn't happen. No humans, no time, no input, silence. Okay, so like no sound. But then there was this one rule, being. So it was focus on being. And what I've noticed is on my first day, at some points I went into this deep creative mode, so my ideas were surfacing and it was almost like my brain doesn't want to let go of them. And this feeling when you have an idea and you want to just write it down because you're gonna forget and it's gonna be the disaster, so I had that. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna write it down, I'm gonna make a card for it, no hassle, no biggie. But then what I've noticed is after making a couple of cards, the creation process was not alive anymore. And because I was so tuned in to how am I feeling, I had this rules like literally displayed in front of my face. It was very easy to say to myself, you know what, I don't need to create this game right now. I made 2 cards, that's what felt alive, but the rest doesn't feel alive. So then I would just put the cards away and put them in a box that was kind of facing backwards, so I don't even get the stimuli remembering that there's cards there. And I think this was actually very important for me to design the environment where I literally took my books that were kind of cover facing, I turned them back or I put them away, and I kind of hid all the cards that I normally have displayed. I just put them away so I don't see them, so I don't get this visual stimulation thing. Oh, like, yes, there's this idea, let's get it going.
So cool. So you did this in your own house.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit more about how you prepared the space and created the right context to do this? Because you did it just yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, you don't live with anybody, you live just on your own, so that was also easy. And yeah, how did you prepare the space?
That's also a great question. I think this was very, very important, like, designing the environment to support whatever you want to do. So I had 2 kind of main, let's say, areas. So one is literally designing the space where I was. And that meant I cleaned it up, I made it nice, I prepare lights in a way that I want to have them. So I just put some love into the space where I live to really make it feel like very clean and open and embracing and cozy, but without the creative stimulation. My house is always designed for movement and for creativity as well. So I have a lot of things around me that just kind of prompt ideas and stimulate me in a way that then build unexpected connections. I put them all away. So just really, still I preserve the coziness, and it's not like I hid everything and it was just empty room with nothing. So I kept the cozy things, but I put everything else away. And literally, like, one thing that I had displayed was, so this was the card that had all the rules, and on the other side I wrote, "Hello, I am on a silent retreat, see you next week." And this was actually what was front facing. So I was
On the door?
Not on the door, this was for me.
For you?
So it was like, see you next week, there's nothing I have to do, there's no pressure. Nice. See you next week, whenever me as this creator person comes back, it's not now I just chill. So that was like I like this funky way of designing my space. And the other part was supplies, so basically my food and what I'm gonna eat. So I wanted to make sure that I don't have to really cook and prep food. So it's not necessarily, it wasn't on my protocol, right, that I don't want to be cooking, so it's fine. But I kind of wanted to preserve as much time just for pure being without having to do something. And eating is kind of an activity. Sure, I could put also fasting, I could fast for that weekend, but that didn't feel aligned. I didn't want to fast, I just want to fast from food. I just wanted to fast from information and spend time with myself. So basically the second part, apart from space design, was creating, just getting supplies. And it was Christmas, so I baked my favorite cake the day before, and I got myself like my favorite fruits and kombucha and some like little treats that I knew I'm gonna enjoy if I have, to kind of give myself this like very nice feeling, like it's a special day, it's celebration, it's my time for myself to connect and be. And this was really cool, like coming to the cooking space and just like, there's my cake, and I'm gonna have it for breakfast because I feel like, and then pour a kombucha and then have a tea and do whatever. So yeah, that was the two important components.
Beautiful. What do you feel were the things that you gained from doing this?
Mm. There was a couple of things. I mean, one was this just profound state of internal stillness and groundedness and space, but inside, and this is really, really, really precious. And somehow this came as like how I can embody this, or how does this manifest in like my way of living, is just this state of presence. So I could notice that during these 2 days I was so extremely present, and this carried through the kind of next days, and it's still carrying. I feel, generally speaking, way more present or aware when I'm not present, and then at the end of the day it's a choice, so I can choose to just be a little bit spacey, or no, like I actually want to ground myself and bring this sense of presence back. So this became much easier somehow. And the other part that was like really, really powerful, and I think this is why I did it, not knowingly that it's gonna happen. So I didn't have expectations, but if I would have expectations, I would hint at this. So, by fading away all the noise and distractions, and also like signal, right? It's not just switching off the noise, it's also switching the good things in my life. But just being in the state of silence, this created this really profound feeling of space, from which I then felt so creative. So like it almost like taking a break, but from everything, not from work, from everything, and just being. And then as I came back to this living mode, where I interact with other people, I use my computer, my phone, all that things, I read books, whatever. I've just noticed the clarity of my ideas was completely different, and combined with the state of presence, I was then able to create from a completely different space, and be like really relaxed, and also very clear on what kind of things I want to be doing, just because of presence. So even engaging in a task that I know it's a procrastinating task that doesn't serve me at all, but noticing it immediately and being okay with that. So like being really compassionate with myself, but then just choosing, what, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm just gonna stop doing it right now because I can. And it's not like, oh no, I'm so bad because I'm procrastinating. No, I'm just procrastinating. It's a choice, but I can also make a choice not to do it. And right now I feel I have enough energy after procrastinating for a while to actually make a choice not to do that. So, poof, let's dramatically change the activity. And also, one other thing that for me personally, like I guess it's my character, I'm a doer, I like to do things, I want to make things, I want to experience things. Just having experienced these 2 days of being, because literally most of the time I spent being, that as a deliberate activity of just being in whatever, however that embodies, but not necessarily doing anything. I've kind of understood that experientially, that this is a valid action you can do. So I don't need to just do stuff, but I can choose to be instead of do. And that was crazy, because instead of randomly reading a book just because I feel, oh, it's a bit too early to go to sleep, so I'm gonna read, but I don't really feel like reading, I just kind of do it. Maybe I'm just gonna sit and do nothing, but just ground myself, bring to the sense of presence, and from there, it's such a good feeling, it's such a bliss. And it's not even necessarily meditation, but I guess I can draw a couple of parallels to that, just I'm not, sitting cross-legged and with my hands like this and trying to bring my focus to the breath, but there is this grounded presence of just being with myself and feeling what is alive, and do I want to lay down, do I want to be still, do I want to just cuddle with my cat, our cat, do I want to just look at the cloud. That's a valid activity. and I can do that, and that was powerful. I still have this sense, sometimes instead of, I don't know, punching the keyboard on the computer, I realized, no, actually I feel like sitting on the floor. It's very liberating to be able to give yourself permission to do that.
Beautiful. So I know that you created a resource for helping people who want to do the same. So if I want to do a silent retreat by myself, you compiled a game/scores to explain how to do it. What are the questions you answer in it? How is it helpful?
Great question. So it all started as a deck of cards because I make everything with cards. So as I was designing my retreat, I was kind of thinking, okay, what are the essential things related to designing your experience to ponder, like what should I think through, like making space, getting food, what are those essentials that you want to kind of check so you can really go into that space with this feeling of, okay, everything is taken care of, I provided for myself, I created this space so I can be undisturbed for the next couple of days. And since the whole idea is to make a self-facilitated process where you don't need another person kind of taking care of everything for you, there is quite a few things. So basically every card guides through, designing your own rules, preparing the space, communicating it with other people. So this is kind of the main idea behind it. Getting clear on what do you have to do to make your experience as valuable for you. And that also means designing it your way, because things like, what was my silent retreat protocols, what were those rules that I defined, might be very different for you, because your house is different, your needs are different, maybe you live with other people. And I really think after, talking with some of people, that actually lots of people seem to be interested in this idea and felt like, oh, I want to do that, I want to experience this. And I started to talk with them and understand, like what would you need to make that happen. And one of the beautiful realizations was that you can do that anywhere, even if you live in the middle of a city with flatmates or with your family, actually that's not a problem, it's a context. Sure, maybe you're not gonna have this profound feeling of absolute stillness, like you're in the middle of a forest with nobody around for miles, but that doesn't really matter so much, because it's more about you being in this internal sense of stillness and creating the space for yourself. So I don't see a problem really of experiencing that in the city. It's just going to be a different experience, but that is not a problem. It's not a limiting factor. You just need to consider certain different things. And this is also, something I did. So I had neighbors that I knew that just because it's Christmas, if they see me going on a walk, they might want to interact with them. So I wanted to communicate with them in advance, saying, hey, if you see me, don't talk to me because I'm on a silent retreat, or just to remove this potential awkwardness, right? So if you would live with the flatmates, it's also something to have as a conversation, right? Like, hey, I would like to go on a silent retreat, but we live together, so how could we design this space so I'm not invasive for you, but also you can support me in this my need for silence, and how can we do this together? And I think paradoxically this could be a very bonding activity, because then you don't really need to do anything as my flatmates, but you are actually contributing to sharing the space holder role just by kind of contributing to this environment. And I think this is a very cool way of interacting with each other, like you don't really need to do nothing, so it's not like I put a lot of responsibilities on you. I'll still take care of my food, I'll still take care of my space, but you're there, and therefore you are a part of it somehow. And then afterwards we can maybe talk, and I can share with your experience, and maybe if you resonate and you want to do something like this later, I can make it easier for you with my experience, and then we can do that in our flat sometimes. So I think there's actually a lot of beauty in doing that in shared spaces.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What else apart from that relational part do you talk about in this resource that you created for other people? Just like a brief list of what are the chapters, what are the topics
chapters
you cover there?
So let's go through cards. So it starts with making time. So actually the importance of making it happen. Like if you don't commit to it, it's just not gonna happen. So how to do that. designing your clear protocol. So what do you need to take care of to make sure that you have boundaries that are very clear for yourself. Communicating with people and how to do that, taking care of supplies, creating your protected, safe, nice space where you're gonna hang out for the next couple of days, and then you're good to go. And then the next part that I cover is how to resurface. And this was actually a very precious thing for me, just to take this couple of days to not just immediately come back to full steam ahead, but no, take it easy and gradually, so you can integrate those experiences and preserve this state of grounding and presence for as long as possible.
And let's say, just one question.
Yeah.
If, let's say, I have a 9 to 5 job and I work Monday to Friday, and I decide to do this on a Saturday and Sunday, is that still possible to include the resurfacing?
Yes, that's a very good question. My personal feeling is that, and like kind of a minimum amount that really creates magic is 2+1.
Yeah.
So for example, Saturday and Sunday, so on Friday you go to sleep with everything covered, even if you go to sleep at 3 a.m. but you wake up in the silent retreat mode, and then it continues the whole Saturday, and then you wake up on Sunday, that's your second day, and then on Monday you kind of gradually resurface. I think this would be way more beneficial than doing just Saturday and Sunday resurfacing. But if there is really no possibility for you to take this one day extra somehow, you could probably
you can still
do
adjust. Okay.
But my personal feeling is that this 2+1 is a very, very good combination, and cutting it short, it feels like pushing it a little bit, and maybe it's better to wait for a couple of even weeks to have a possibility of add this third day. But maybe you can start on Friday afternoon and then play somehow with different times. It doesn't need to start in the morning.
Gotcha. So after the resurfacing / integration, what else do you have there?
It's almost over. Then it's the next steps. So do you want to continue with silent retreat as a practice, and how you could do that, so to implement it more regularly in your life? I mean, not regularly as in every week, but kind of once, twice a year. And then I share a little bit about, this is kind of more an epilogue type of thing, so it's not directly related, but I feel it is somehow important to consider, which is the pattern breaking in social contexts. Because and this essentially means behaving in a certain different way that defies the regular norm, so breaking a pattern, but in a context where you're with other people. So for example, creating a silent retreat in a shared flat would be precisely this, like our normal pattern is when we see each other in the living room, we say, hi, how are you, how was your night, we share things. But if I'm in the silent retreat, maybe I'm not even gonna look you in the eyes, and maybe we're just not gonna interact. So this is pattern breaking. And this is something I did a couple of times in different contexts. We did this together, if you remember, a long time ago in Edinburgh, when I spent a day blindfolded, and you were my helper when we went to the city. So we were in the supermarket, and I was just all day blindfolded, so I couldn't see anything, and it was really powerful for me as as a person experiencing this, and also very vulnerable, and being next to you in this different role. I also spent a day on a festival when I was silent, so this was not about not interacting but not speaking. So I haven't spoken for a whole day, but I was having deep conversations with people, so I was just listening and interacting in a non-verbal way, and that led to very beautiful places. So I feel, while this is not specifically silence retreat, it's still somehow relevant, because you are creating this pattern breaking mechanism. And this idea of silence retreat in communities, in shared spaces, I think has a lot of interesting potential, because from what I see, there's actually a lot of interest in people to have this experience, to go into silence. But sometimes, you're breaking the pattern and social norms, so it's a bit of this awkwardness. But no, it's just, all it comes down to is design your protocol and communicate it clearly with people who are there, because most of the time people who live with you want to support you and want to allow this kind of experience to happen. It's not like something so difficult for them to accommodate. It's quite the opposite. So that's the last part of the course, or of the game, the silence game.
Wonderful. Is there anything you feel like is left to say before we end this conversation?
How about you? Did you ever go on a silent retreat? Did you ever think about something like this? What are your kind of reflections hearing all of my sharing?
Well, I did a Vipassana retreat, which was 10 days. So it was different, it was very powerful, but I didn't have to create it for myself. So in that way, it was easier because it was implemented from the outside. That was already a long time ago, but I would love to do something like this at some point soon. When you told me you did it, I was like, oh, I need to do this. I need to do something like this. And even if it's for 2 days, and just seeing how grounded and calm you were after you did it was really inspiring for me. And so yeah, I'm very interested, and I think I might have a look at your new game/course to check your inputs and do it myself as well.
Yeah, I could see the spark of curiosity in your eyes, because you were the first person that I interacted with after my silent retreat, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of interesting because the morning after I went to pick up Silvia from the airport, and I was still in this mode of I don't really want to be like too much in this speaking space. I want to just preserve this groundedness, but also I don't want to like make a hard boundary. I'm not speaking.
Yeah.
So I wasn't speaking so much, but I was still communicating with you, and it felt very nice actually to be in this very chilled moment. And I remember I took you to this beautiful place in nature, and we had just like this nice moment of groundedness and listening to the sounds of vibrations of the mountain and the ocean. It was really beautiful. I really enjoyed that time. That would be also something interesting to practice, like to do a silent retreat together with another person and interact intentionally in the same space, but design it together and co-facilitate it, rather than have like a provided experience, which also is amazing, right? Like if you can go to a facilitated silent retreat, the amazing part of it is that you don't need to take care of anything, right? Like this is the beauty. You probably pay for it, you go there, it's all done, and it's in a different space, so you get this whole pattern breaking, fresh beginnings, all that kind of stuff. But the risk is that then you're coming back to your house, your old patterns, and maybe it's difficult to take what you gained because the old patterns are kicking back. So I think it's just a completely different experience, but both are very valuable. Doing it for yourself, maybe it's a bit trickier. Maybe, that's why the cards, you need to think of some things to make this experience worthwhile. But you are doing it yourself. It's like it's an integral part of life. It's not like a bubble that somebody else created, and you're doing it in your own space. Meaning, hey, it's your space. You can continue, because you can be still in this mode after your silent retreat is done. And maybe this is the most powerful thing here, right? Like this state of presence and inner silence is something that can continue be carried for long time after. At least that's my intention. I want to still have it. I want to have this playful, creative mind and vibe, but also when I want to go back to this presence and stillness, have it inside.
Well, thank you so much for this beautiful, inspiring sharing of your experience. And is there any way people can learn more about it?
There is. Would you believe it? You'll figure it out.
Well,
thank you so much. This was super cool. To be interviewed makes it much easier when somebody asks questions. Super cool.